Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights. I am joined this week. I am Knight John Mills, and I'm joined with fellow Knights of the Round Table, Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser. And we regret to inform you that the former producers of Houselights have been sacked, and the people that sacked them have also been sacked. And tonight's performance is, in fact, produced by Ralph the Wander Llama. So we are here, obviously, to discuss in our continuing Wing of King Arthur the next film, the next entry, as we leap into 1975 with Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which, believe it or not, counts as part of the Arthur pantheon in the way we reckon things. So here we are in 1975 with a couple of coconuts carried by some sort of swallow. And, gents, instead of kicking off with our typical thing of like, when's the first time you remember, like, we'll get to that one. But I want to ask, Darren, I'll kick this off to you first. Which Knight of the Round Table do you see yourself most reflected in this depiction of King Arthur's court?
Man. It's a good question. I think John Cleese's character.
That's going for Lancelot.
Lancelot, yeah.
Okay.
He's so dry and so funny, but he is trying. He makes things so much worse as he goes. But again, they all do that. But yes, I think Lancelot is. I probably feel a kinship to him more than. Although the science one is pretty funny too. I don't know why I'm not remembering their names, but
they say
them all the time. But you know what I mean, though. So
let's be honest that who's playing whom in this is not as important as the gags or just knowing who Arthur is. But Tristan, same question to you. Which Knight of the Round Table do you see yourself reflected in this Monty Python adaptation of the King Arthur legend?
Probably Galahad.
Yes, fair.
That was very much me in high school. Just women throwing themselves at me and me saying, no, I can't, I mustn't.
Just a little bit of peril.
Yeah.
I would have to say, honestly, I don't see myself as a Knight of the Round Table. I'd say that I'm probably the Wizard Tim. I think that would be fair at this junction. But obviously, when you're talking about Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you're talking about something that is regarded as it's one of the pillars of comedy in the last 50 some odd years. It is a constant reference point. It is referred to throughout popular culture. Even if people haven't seen this, they've at least heard a joke or two from it. So Tristan, when was your first encounter with Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Were you a wee lad? Was it something you watched with your dad, or was this something you stumbled upon later in life?
This was actually shown to me in high school in English class.
Oh, wow.
And this was, we were actually studying King Arthur and the legend and everything about it and the historical reference, the literary references. And as a treat, my English teacher, showed this movie, and you could tell she was super excited to show it to us. And when the movie ended, she's like, and that's it, guys. That's just it. And it just goes on and on. Like, it goes on for a couple of minutes. Like, it's black and it's hilarious. It just goes on like this. And you could tell, like, it was a little infectious just because she was so excited. Like, you got excited too to watch it. And I think I can't remember if she broke it up into 2 days. I mean, she had to have, right? She must have broken it up into 2 days, or I can't remember if we had a long day that day or whatever.
I mean, there is an intermission, so you just
there you go.
Yeah.
That was the first time I ever watched it. Now, that does not include the constant barrage of gangly kids walking through the halls quoting this movie, the ones with bad skin and bad teeth, just talking all about this movie all the time. If we don't include that for a decade, then yes, that was the first time I saw it in high school.
Yeah, your story about the constant references, it brings to mind for me, like my own struggles with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where I had to say to friends that I had in high school and college, I said, as soon as one of you knuckleheads can go a week without mentioning the damn thing, I will read it. And I didn't read it till I was out of college. So there you go. Darren, Same question to you. Were you a young lad when you encountered this? Was it a crazy uncle corrupting your sense of humor, or was it similarly high school time?
No, this is kind of the same as The Princess Bride that we also talked about. This was a camp video. This was a working at summer camp. And, we went to the box car and pulled out that giant, 50-inch CRT on the cart. Everybody got their sleeping bags and pillows. And you knew that like half the people probably had seen whatever movie it was going to be, and the rest were going to be indoctrinated into whatever, cult classic. Pretty much all was cult classic type movies that we watched at summer. And yeah, so guess what we did the whole rest of the summer was quote Monty Python, like on the radio and on our little notes on our clipboards, and just all throughout the summer. And yeah, it's, I kind of feel sad for people who watch it and don't have an outlet to express the quotes, because if you're in school or if you're at a job that allows that or something like that, it's so much more enjoyable because it is such a quotable movie. And we've said many times, or I've said many times, that the mark of a good comedy is often directly linked with its quotability. It's a major factor.
It is a major factor, and I think that one of the things that's really interesting about Monty Python and the Holy Grail is, Tristan, I'll throw this to you first, whether I'm reading this right or not, but I think this is one of those things that winds up unintentionally spoiling comedy for a while afterward, because I think people are still trying to chase this dragon in terms of the, regardless of whether somebody loves it or hates it or is lukewarm about it, there's a certain type of magic that this movie captures. There's a certain sort of like oddball, off the rails type of humor that's happening here. And it's this, if the alchemy works for you, it's absolute magic. And even if it doesn't work for you, you see that this is the work of some slightly disturbed minds, really just throwing everything at you at once. I think it winds up, and I'm not saying that like it winds up being a net negative. I'm saying that there are directors to this day who are still trying to capture this type of magic. And it becomes one of those things where it's a classic that can never be recaptured, but people nonetheless keep going after it.
Man, I cannot wait to find out what this question is.
Do you agree with that statement?
Was that the question?
Yeah. Do you? I said I want to find out if you agree with this.
I still have no idea what the question is.
Oh, that's because you're not a close listener. I was talking about everything. I said, yeah, it's a wind up. Do you agree with that or not?
I have no idea what I'm agreeing with. That people are trying to chase that feeling.
Yes, I'll state it in fewer words for you. That this is a very funny movie that makes such an impact that it winds up having an effect where people who aren't as skilled as the people who put this one together keep trying to find the type of magic that this movie has contained within it to varying levels of success.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can answer that really, because I feel like if you're chasing something, you're usually chasing success. I mean, if you look at how the cast and crew look at this movie, they look at it unfavorably because they hated filming it when they filmed it. But this was by far and away their most successful film. Like, I think that the cast believes that Life of Brian is their best film, but it's nowhere near as successful as Holy Grail. But in terms of people who this is influenced, I mean, this came out in 75.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, people, who were at their prime in 75, went on to be directors. And like, well, I'm guessing like
I'm
saying McKay or what?
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that people, just like people refer to Star Wars as a landmark thing, and you can see this effect that Star Wars has afterward. I think that Holy Grail winds up being one of those things that has that sort of effect. And I have trouble sometimes sussing out whether that's a positive or a negative thing, because it is such an odd movie to have such an impact.
I can't really say that I've seen too much evidence of people chasing this, because this movie is so unique to its time and to its audience and to its style. I mean, this is Gilliam. This is Terry Gilliam's first feature-length film. and you can still see some Gilliam in there. And this is a director's podcast, so we should absolutely talk about Gilliam. And like
Of
when you
course we
look at
will.
his other works, something like anywhere from Brazil to Quixote, there are certain things that are very much him. But I mean, like with the slapstick jokes, with the nonsensical storyline, with the animation thrown in, with the meta jokes, everything like that put together, I'd say that this is a very unique movie, and I can't say off the top of my head where I've seen it try to be reproduced, whether it was successful or failed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't have an opinion. That's why I'm asking the question. Like, I think that it's more of a tonal thing, where I think that's what's unsuccessfully chased by other directors, is that sense of self-awareness works here really well. That sense of self-awareness you're pointing to. And Darren, I would say that there are a lot of movies that come along all the way up to this day where they have a sense of self-awareness, and they never figure out how to break the fourth wall in the same way that this one does.
Yeah, I agree with Tristan. I can't really see a correlation of like, oh yeah, well then these three movies in the early 80s, you could see they were really trying to capture that, because it is such a one-off. It's like the right people, the right type of humor. It's a real specific humor. It's a dry humor. It's a zany humor. Given more moments to think about it than Tristan had, I probably, maybe Deadpool is the closest thing I could think of that like also kind of breaks that fourth wall, but that is more because it's Deadpool and not because it's trying to capture the spirit of Monty Python.
I watched that 30 minutes ago. No joke.
But but overall, I think if anything, maybe it just gave a shot in the arm to comedies in general. Maybe not capturing the Monty Python-ness, but like, hey, comedies can be successful, because we've all seen the waves of comedy movies. Like we had a lot of those. Well, this is probably way more in like the late 90s, early thousands, but you had all those duplicating movies like Scary Movie, and like where they're making fun of tropes like to the extreme.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because as we're sitting here talking about it, the year before this, both Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles come out, and those both have a very similar sort of vibe and a similar sort of self-awareness. So maybe it is just something where there was a wave of this sort of thing. But Tristan, to get back to what you're talking about with Gilliam as a director, oh, this is a troubled production and the cast hated making it. Gilliam has a track record of troubled productions, one would say. Do you think that that's just, he was basically, the production behind the scenes with this winds up being a warning sign to everybody that every film that he works on is going to be a bit challenging? Do you think that he just never, like, is it just his working style? Do you see, project it forward to those other movies you mentioned that he did? Do you see all of the seeds there in this movie? Do you see those sorts of sensibilities already come to fruition, or do you see somebody without any vision on this one?
I think Gilliam is a certified nut job, but
True.
His the craziness that has happened on his sets in the future, to say that they were linked to him here might be too much of a stretch, because like he's young, he's inexperienced. They're all in this together. Like, this is the type of production where like they didn't even buy a rabbit. Like they had it loaned by an owner, for the killer rabbit. Like that's like the reason why there's coconuts in the first place, is because they couldn't afford horses. Like, I think Pink Floyd helped give some money to this movie by giving proceeds of Dark Side of the Moon, because they were such fans of the circus. And it's like that, like that's like they could not get funding for this movie. Like they had to scratch and steal and rob and borrow and in order to make this movie. And so I think to blame all those production problems on Gilliam being a crazy person, or like having production problems in the future, is a bit too much. But it is kind of a coincidence. So I'd say it's more of just the situation than it is him. And if they got a more experienced director, if they got more of
Mm-hmm.
an experienced director who, maybe was doing this as a favor, saying like, okay, I'll be the journeyman, I'll help you guys out, I'll get this production going, it probably would have been better. But with Gilliam and being inexperienced, I'm sure it didn't help.
I think that maybe that's the reformulation of the question right there, is, or the idea right there is that since this is his first film and this is how that went, he did not have the type of experience on his first film that taught him discipline or production management. He thought, obviously he gets there to a certain extent because there are definitely successes in his filmography, and a lot of
12
I would
Monkeys.
argue there are a lot of terrific. Please, Brazil is one of my favorite films of all time, and I love The Fisher King as well. And The Man Who Killed Don Quixote is actually a very interesting failure, to borrow a term that I've used for David Lynch's Dune. But it's one of those things where, Darren, do you think that this is the type of experience that basically, it winds up being something that doesn't encourage the discipline that maybe another, if he'd had somebody steering him through the process? Because Terry Jones, I believe, is also credited on this. At
It's like
least
a dual direction, the Terrys.
Yeah, the
And
Terrys.
I kind of remember seeing some behind the scenes things about it. Like, I don't remember what percentage it really worked out between them, or if one of them left or was upset, or I can't remember. I'm sure it was tumultuous because it sounds like this whole production was. But I will say, I don't think this movie works with a more experienced director coming in. I think the magic sauce of it's one of them inside the troupe who is the director. It's like the difference between Jonathan Frakes directing a Star Trek and someone else coming in from the outside and making Trek. I think, granted, like, it sounds like it was, a bear to shoot, but I think because you have this magical alchemy of this particular troupe, acting or comedy troupe, and all of the issues they had. So like the coconut thing, I think because you had a comedian in the director's chair, they were able to pivot and be like, okay, well, how do we make that funny? How do we work with that? And that becomes one of the best bits of the entire movie. And instead, if they were just like, okay, well, we have no horses, so or we have horses for one day so we can shoot, and we have to always be going up to the same castle because that's the one shot we have. Like, yeah, it would kind of work, but so again, not to dissect into the entire movie, but I think two of the strong benefits of this movie is the fact that you have someone from their troupe who is in the director's chair, and so they're able to pivot on the low budgetness of it. Like, I don't think this movie works as if someone did come along, in a magical world and be like, hey, here's $3 million, Monty Python, make this movie. I think you would get a completely different movie that would not nearly be as funny, because through adversity, they crafted, that's where half the jokes come from, it feels like, is from the adversity.
That's a fair point. That's a very fair point. I think that what's interesting is I have lost sight over time, and I want to be very clear. I'll go ahead and spoil it. I adore this film, but I don't know if I adore this film half as much as I adore everything it's given me over time, if that makes sense.
You've
Because
grown
if
up
I
with
look,
this film.
right, but and it was very, very instrumental in Monty Python's Flying Circus, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Life of Brian, all that stuff. Very, very influential in helping form my sense of humor as I grew up. I watched Monty Python's Flying Circus with my dad on PBS, for God's sake, right? And I didn't see this until later. I was a teenager and some friends showed it to me. Where it was, oh, Monty Python did a movie? No, I didn't know that. And I saw it and I was like, this is amazing. I love this. So I'd sort of been primed for it because I'd watched the sketch comedy show. But there are so many things about this production, whether it's because of its troubles or in spite of its troubles, where there's kind of a script. It's really just sort of shooting from the hip, which is part of its charm. But Tristan, we talk about this all the time about nostalgia glasses. Is it possible to view this movie without thick nostalgia glasses on. If you were to show this to somebody who's never seen Monty Python before, who has never grown up with this, and you show it to them, do you think you wind up creating a new Monty Python fan, or do you get somebody who looks at it and says, yeah, okay, all right?
I want that same question after him.
Of course.
I don't think so. I think this takes a very unique type of person to enjoy this. I think you have to have nostalgia on it. I do not think this is universal. I do not think this is timeless. I feel like this is something that is geared towards the rejected, the kind of in the same way that people like anime. You're like, oh, that's a type of person who likes that. You know, like I feel like it's the same people who like Monty Python. It's a subsect of people who enjoy this. And when I told my wife what we were doing next, and when I said I was like, oh, we're doing Monty Python and the Holy Grail, she's like, ugh. I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, I dated a guy who made me watch this like 3 times in as many weeks, and he wouldn't shut up about it. He wouldn't stop quoting it. And she was just done with it to begin with. And I'd only seen this once before podcasting about it. I saw it once in high school, and then I never watched it again until preparation for this podcast. And I had a wildly different reaction to it than I did in high school as I did yesterday.
I'm sure, but Darren, you said you wanted this question as well, so knock it over to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, my experience. So yeah, and I think you're right, Tristan. I think, you know, there are people who like Monty Python, and there's people it's type of humor. It is a very specific type of humor. Now, I showed this to my daughter a couple months back, and she's 11, and I show her the entire thing except the Castle Anthrax. We're not quite ready for that, but she loves it. She was cackling. I think her favorite part was probably the Sir Lancelot like running up multiple take, which is it's just such a funny bit because it happens so many. I think it happens like 7 times. Like it happens 2-3 more times than you would think. Like you would think the beat would drop and it would move, but it doesn't. But she loved it and was cackling and laughing. And so when, you know, often sometimes my wife or kids will ask me, oh, what are you watching this week? Because they know I have a directing podcast. And I said, oh, well, we're doing Monty Python. And she's like, oh, Dad, I want to watch it with you. Can we watch it together? So I, you know, made sure we had time one evening last week to watch it. And it was interesting for myself watching it because I hadn't watched it basically a month apart, like that back to back in a long while. Like usually it's like once a year, maybe I'll put it in, you know, I remember it a lot, so I don't need to, you know, refresh that often, but it was still really funny. And so I'll say that is, I think it is definitely possible for it to make new fans if that's their type of humor. If that is not their type of humor, just like any other comedy, you know, people could watch Mel Brooks films or other types of comedy and be like, it's just the jokes aren't landing. I don't know what percentage of the populace is Monty Python humor. And maybe there's also a component of exposure, meaning, you know, Tristan, like you said, your wife was exposed to it in a non-real pleasant way. And so she kind of got a bad taste in the mouth versus my daughter seeing it with her dad, and we share enough humor genes to both think it's funny. So yeah, that's how I form my answer.
I wind up being Team Darren on this one because I did show this to my oldest, and while it's not like her favorite movie, she got quite a chuckle out of it, and she got all of the jokes, and she thought it was funny as hell. And she liked it enough that we did wind up watching Life of Brian afterward, which she does like more. And I will fully concede in terms of a film and it's much more a film than this one.
Yeah.
This is very much
a
feels
bunch of
like
sketches like strung together.
Yeah, this literally, I think one of the charms, and I can honestly say that if you showed this to me cold now, I would have a very warm feeling for it because I have a weak spot for things that are just bat-ass crazy. And this has the verve of a bunch of friends, talented friends, getting together and saying, let's do this thing. Let's have some fun. And so it has that energy of like an El Mariachi or some other independent film that doesn't have a lot of funding. And it's just people going out and going smash mouth and having a great time with it. And I consider that energy infectious and this is the type of movie where I would look at it and I would say, I can honestly say that while nostalgia makes me treat it as if it's, part of Star Wars lore for me. Like I was saying right before we started recording, I've easily seen this movie nearly as many times as some of the Star Wars movies, right? And I've seen those quite a bit. And I have it committed so much to memory, I could probably do it from beginning to finish right now without a pause. But I think it's fair, and I think you're both saying sort of a similar thing. If this type of comedy works for you, this film's going to work for you. And in terms of your wife, Tristan, having an unpleasant experience with it, I guarantee you that there are at least 2 women in the world who hate Star Wars because of me and there's my association with it. So, you got to grade on a curve on that sort of thing. But bringing it back to Gilliam and bringing it back to putting something like this together, for all of the problems, for all of the criticisms that one might have, Tristan, isn't it an accomplishment that he put this together at all? For whatever flaws you might see with it, for however well it works for you, given what you know about how strapped they were for cash, how they were flying by the seat of their pants, isn't putting together something that winds up landing as well as it has for so many? Isn't that in and of itself a testament to his skill? Or at least his nation's skill here?
Well, I think, it makes you wonder, like, is it Gilliam and Jones's ability? Is it the troop's ability? Is it, like this thing is, how many years old now? It's just like, it's on so many lists of top comedies of all time. Like it's influenced so many different people. I think, yeah, like it's enduring. It obviously has an audience, and this isn't just a cult following. Like this has a gigantic following. So like I think being able to say that they put anything together, that I mean the legacy is the answer to that question.
I want to ask this because it's so tough. This is one of those ones where it's really tough, I think, to really discuss it in any way that anybody else hasn't before. So I'm going to give it a try here. I'm going to say, Darren, the music that everybody dreads and hates. In terms of the music here, we know that this goes on, and we now have Spam-A-Lot, which is a Broadway musical based on this. The musical numbers in this movie, or the music for the fight scenes, the themes that you hear, the theme song for Camelot, do you think they add to the overall experience, or do you think it's just as slapdash as the production itself?
No, I really like the score to this movie. It literally the entire time we've been talking, I don't know why, but the part where the masthead ship is sailing up at the very end, that part is playing on like loop in my head, and I can't make it stop. But yeah, it's like da 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 da, and it's just playing. But no, there's a lot of great music. There's and it's a soundscape. It's not just the music cues, it's the chanting monks in one scene, and it's the the rhyming bridge keeper. Like that's music too. That's part of the makeup of this this film. But yeah, there's still a lot of fun parts. I've totally kind of forgotten about the Camelot part, which is literally just a song and a jingle thrown in, but it's really funny because of how it's like, actually, no, never mind. We're not going to go there.
Yeah.
It's a silly place. I've seen fans who have made like a Lego version of that song where it's all animated and stop motion Lego, just that clip. And it's really funny. But yeah, I mean, as the man who, says he can't enjoy a score without themes based on characters, which is not really the case in this. There's just it is a hodgepodge of stuff, but I think it works. I think it's memorable. I just saw there's a actual kind of soundtrack, and I'm kind of interested of tracking that down so I can just have that. I'm looking at the names of the tracks, and they don't quite match what I would expect from. I can't remember what scenes they're connected to just by those names, but no, I think it works. But I also want to say overall, back to Gilliam, I think this is a in the edit movie. This probably had a substantial editing process of like, how do we assemble what we rightly know is a tangentially at best related sequence of bits together. And that's where you find, the and I don't know if it was like the Lancelot running bit. Like, I don't know if that was found in the edit or if that was planned. It could be either, or it could be, on the set, they're like, oh, what if we just clipped it? But, there's so many moments in this movie that are funny because of the edit. And it was interesting. Like I said, I hadn't watched this so in proximity to a previous watch in a long while. So this time I was noticing more of, oh yeah, they're kind of just on the ground. Like, I recognize that tree and that thing in the back. Like, they literally probably filmed a lot of this in like 50 square meters of space and just shot it from different angles to make it look like, and it was a little more apparent than I had noticed in the past of how, conservative they had to be in their angles to just make it look like they were trousing all over Great Britain. But yeah. So overall, though, I think this is an in the edit movie, probably with a giant deadline, staring them down to get it done. But I think it's integral to the type of humor and because that's what humor is. It's the rise, the fall, the punchline, the intermission thrown in, the whole opening credits. Like, I feel like those are things that were like, how do we add to the runtime, but how do we want people to feel going into the start of this movie? Because those credits create a feeling, create a expectation. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not like any other credits we've seen before. And then you get to the intermission, which lasts, like, I could totally see the joke of some people, because intermissions aren't as much a thing nowadays, but they were back in the 70s. So I could see people starting to get up from their seat and they're walking away and they're like halfway down the aisle, and then the movie comes back on and they're like, what the? And then they kind of laugh because they're like, they did that on purpose. They purposely tricked me into getting out of my seat. But we're not going to see that joke because we're not in the theaters in 1975.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm glad that you mentioned editing, because if there is something that Tristan really loves to hate when he doesn't like the way it's done, it's editing. Tristan, do you agree with Darren that this was found in the edit, and do you think that that's because of the skill of John Hackney, the editor, or do you think that it's just jokes in a blender?
I think it's just jokes in a blender. But I think with a movie this cheap, so much of it has to. Your editor is your savior. It actually can go one of two ways. When a movie's really cheap, you can get an editor who can reuse stuff that you would never think possible, can reorient stuff, can find little moments in fast cutting that really sell the joke, like Lancelot kicking the bridesmaid in the chest or anything like that. Like it flashes on so quickly. And other times, if you have a really cheap movie, the editor's like, okay, well, I put A, B next to B and B next to C and C next to D for you. Hope that works, because that's all that they have. So it really all depends on the production. But with these guys, I'm sure they ran a lot of film during these takes and they had a lot of takes to work with. So I'd say the editor probably had, even though this was cheaply made, they had a lot of stuff, a lot of comedic moments to work with in order to get that moment. So a comedic editor is worth their weight in gold. Even Gilliam prides himself in being a technical director, where before this he was really only used to animation. And so, it's a very technical medium in animation, like knowing where everything is and the figures and placing everything in the frame. And a lot of the actors said that that's how he treated them, where they weren't really people. They were just things to be moved around. And watching this, I didn't get that sense that this was a technical director, because the cinematography, like certain angles that were shot, I'm just like, really, that's where you want to put the camera? Okay. Like, like it felt like they just kind of put the sticks down and we're like, okay, we got like 5 minutes in this light in this location that we're not supposed to be in. Sometimes it felt like that. So yeah, I give praise to the editor for this one, even though I don't think it was a particularly well edited film. I think it utilized what it had in order to get the job done.
Yeah, I think they had lots of takes, except for the take of the guy falling into the crevasse, because it was the exact same shot every time, whether it be night or
Yes.
which again is funny, because when you notice that, it's funny how it's the same shot. Or this time, for the first time, I noticed in the storming of the castle with Lancelot, that that main room that they're in, the one you look down from really high and all the wedding parties there, that's the same room that the son and his dad are in. Just that same corner, the same door. It's just been dressed differently. I didn't ever realize they reused that exact same room twice. They just changed it and shot just that corner to be the upstairs, locked away room, but it's the exact same. The window and the doors all line up. It's just, I'm like, oh, again, they probably had just so little to work with. They had to make it all work.
I think that I mean, the editor doesn't go on to do anything of real note after this. He continues working, obviously, and he's good enough to continue getting jobs. But this isn't like an absolute like Stuart Baird level effort here. I think that I don't have a problem with the editing. I also don't have a problem with the way that it's shot, because there's a read of this movie that I've heard from one person in the past, and it always stuck with me, that the movie is actually a bunch of people who had his read of the movie was that the movie is a bunch of people who have escaped from an asylum and are wreaking havoc on the countryside. Now, that's his own personal thing, but I think that, let me throw this to you, Tristan. Would it soften your view on this if because I've gone and we all know a ton of people, and almost every person I've spoken to has a different interpretation of what's really happening on screen. Everybody agrees jokes are funny, but everybody is sort of coming at it with their own flavor of what's actually happening. Do you think that that is a function of a well-made movie, or do you think that that is the function of a poorly made movie that, there's that everybody can have so many different takes on what's happening?
Once again, I'm going to have to answer your questions with ambiguity, where I don't think it's a sign of either. I feel like when I get questions like this from certain people, like there was one time I hated a movie. I absolutely hated it. And there was this guy who was defending it, and he says, he's like, well, you felt something, right? You felt something. That's the sign of a good movie. And I said, I was like, so does a steaming pile of dog crap. That makes me feel disgust, but that doesn't mean I enjoy what I'm seeing. And so with the whole interpretation issue, like a lot of people will think of stuff like Nolan's ending in Inception, where there's just like, what's your interpretation? What's real? What's not? And it's all about the experience that you take away from that. I don't think this is one of those movies. Basically, it's not that deep. It's a collection of bits that they're stringing together through one through line.
I don't take anything away from that. I think that the person I'm referring to had a very, very unique take, and I think that's why I've only ever run across that interpretation all of once in my entire life. Darren, when you come to this movie and you watch it, and you said, you watch it every so often, you don't necessarily watch it, twice within a month of each other sort of thing. But when you come to this movie and you watch it, what is it that you're looking to experience again? What is it that you're looking to recapture when you rewatch Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Just the laughs. I mean, I remember, I think it was Kung Fu Panda was one of the, when seeing it in theaters and like actually laughing out loud, like at some of the jokes and bits, like, and it made me realize like a lot of times comedy like that really makes you laugh, like actually not just LOL, I typed it on my screen, but like in person I'm laughing at this and I'm cackling up and I'm cracking up. Like that's actually kind of rare, depending on your humor level and things like that. So yeah, when I put in Monty Python, you know, I think that's why I usually watch it maybe once a year, because I'm letting it kind of drift from memory enough so that it can zing me again. Not that I've forgotten, you know, what happens, but I think it punches up the jokes a little bit when they're not like so memorized, at least for me, that it's like, okay, you know, and then it catches you off guard. And again, I think Lancelot's running bit, or you know, Brave Sir Robin's, you know, the song from his minstrels, and you get a lot, just so much humor from this. So that's why I watch it. I watch it because I want to laugh. I want to have a fun. It's I wouldn't even say it's a turn your brain off movie. It's not like you're not thinking. You're just enjoying the bits, and just as it goes from one to the next. You know, you're not trying to follow the overarching plot of the knights as they search for the
Right.
you know, for the Grail. It's in there, but it's like that's barely what the movie's about. You know.
See that I agree with you. I think that there are just so many bits thrown together. And Tristan, I know that you took the tack of, oh, well, this is jokes in a blender, but I think that jokes in a blender can work when the jokes are fairly quick and I would say reasonably intelligent. Like when Arthur first happens across the peasant and we get a whole lecture about valid systems of government, and lines like, just because some watery tart throws a scabbard at you.
I thought of you during that joke. I was just like, John, I bet John loves that joke.
I love it so much. And I just think that there are so many things that do in fact work on some sort of level. But at the same time, like I was saying before, I think this is a fairly difficult movie to talk about, just because of the fact that it's, you know, it's like having a discussion about the original Star Wars. It's like, what are we really going to hit on as we go through? So actually, Tristan, I'll throw it to you here. Like, what have we overlooked? What is it that you want us to take away with before we get into our ratings? You know, what is it that should be taken away with Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Like, what is it that we haven't hit on yet?
I was trying to be a really cool guy. You know, I was trying to let you guys have your fun and just kind of talk it out and not be that guy. When I watched this last night, I was like, good Lord, what a piece of dog shit.
The funny thing is, in my head, I said, I guarantee you Tristan's going to hate this. Oh, I knew you would.
Oh, man. I mean, okay, I'm not an idiot, okay? I'm not an idiot. I know that this movie has a legacy. I do. I really do. Like, it's clear to me that this movie has societal impact. It has artistic impact. Like, people revere this film. It's on top 10 lists. It's in top 100 lists. This movie has made waves in the zeitgeist in ways that I can only dream of making in my lifetime. I understand that. Okay. When I was talking to my wife, I said, I was like, why did I hate that? Why did I despise that when I didn't in high school? And she's like, well, you watched it in English class. You were just happy to be doing anything other than English class. And I was like, oh my God, you're probably right. This is just so not for me. This type of humor, this type of execution, I was cringing the entire time. I think the only time I kind of chuckled was during the whole political thing at the beginning. Like that's pretty much the only time that I kind of chuckled.
Commune with 2/3 majority for internal votes.
Yeah, like
3/4 majority for external votes.
And also, like, the Black Knight was kind of funny too. You know, when he's like, you know, tis a scratch, you know, like tis a flesh wound. You know, like, yes, I mean that's kind of funny, but like it just kept getting more and more off the rails, and I started fast forwarding it because there's just like, oh, this scene's just gonna keep going. Like this movie was terrible. I'll give you my rating now, 1.5 if I'm being generous.
All right, 1.5 dead insides. 1.5 dead insides from Tristan Riddell.
And I want everyone who writes me letters, because you guys do, and everyone who reaches out to me online, because you guys do, I don't know why they don't talk to you guys, but for some reason they talk to me. I want you to remember everything that I said and lead up to my rating to soften the
No,
blow.
no, don't remember anything he said in lead up. Just
We're
come
gonna
at him
fast
hard.
forward that part, just like you fast forward the movie, Tristan.
Just like you fast forwarded past the holy hand grenade of Antioch, which is also one of the funniest bits of the entire movie, because 5 is right out. Darren, where are you coming in with this? All right, give me something to work with here that isn't the Grinch living up on the hill up above Whoville here.
I mean, no, I think Tristan has a good point. Like, it is that kind of a movie where if it is not your humor, yeah, it's not going to land. That is not surprising at all. And I'm glad that when my daughter watched it, it was her kind of humor, because I didn't know. I could show it to my son when he's a little older, and it could not be his humor. I don't know that. So yeah, but it makes it fun when you find other people who that is their type of humor. Like, obviously you and I, John, like, we enjoy, I think next time we see each other in person, I'm going to have some, things to make sure I'm getting over to where you are. But no.
So long as my swallow isn't canceled to fly out to see you. Yeah.
But no, this is, I think it's a fun movie. It is interesting. I mean, I know we're not doing a whole sequence on Terry Gilliam because he's got quite the diverse list of movies as well. Like, not all comedies, not all, of this or that. But I think, like I said before, I think the strongest aspects are the edit. I think having one of the comedy troupe in the director's chair is important. I think you're going to get a lot out of that. But at the end, it's Monty Python. It's a comedy troupe. They know how to tell jokes. They know their audience. I highly doubt if you were a fan of Flying Circus that this didn't land, because that's your type of humor, just like just like Andy. So yeah, if you're not, maybe not British, but like if Flying Circus isn't your bag, then this is probably not going to land as much. But it does to me. I think it's a really funny film. I'm glad I got to watch it with someone. I think, like all good comedies, watching them alone is harder because there's something about the infectious laughter of the room where one person kind of starts to chuckle and it self-reinforces, and you don't get that when it's just, yourself, or it's harder. Not that I don't think it's funny when I'm watching it by myself, but yeah. So all that to say, though, I'm going to give this a 4. I'm not going to give it a 5 because it is a bag of cats, and just trying to, it's hard to say, I don't like saying words like perfect movie or perfect comedy. There's definitely times that I don't feel like I'm in the mood for Monty Python. I'm like, I could watch this right now, but I know it's not going to do anything for me. So I'm going to wait for it to fade a little from memory and then kind of re-spice it up. But yeah, it's a solid 4 for me. It's funny. It's rewatchable. It's quotable. It's so quotable. It's obnoxious sometimes because, people won't shut up about it. But yeah. So, but what did you give it, John?
Well, I will come straight out of the gate and say that I agree with you, Darren. It's a solid 4. Because there are so many jokes that work, but it's not a 5 because of the fact that the laughter is sporadic. Like with a truly like top tier successful comedy. I'll take, for instance, another comedy that Tristan hated because he's dead inside, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where there's a cadence to the laughs. There has to be a rhythm to things. And I don't think that there's a rhythm in this. And I think that looking at it from the vantage point of a director, I think that this is the least Terry Gilliam movie of Terry Gilliam movies. I think even Life of Brian is more of a Terry Gilliam movie. I think that this does have a disadvantage of the type of production, what was going on behind the scenes, of trying to get the funding, of trying to get everything done, of having to work just at absolute bare bones. And as a result, like when you go forward with Gilliam and he has the opportunity to have a more cohesive script, like in Life of Brian, like in The Fisher King, like in 12 Monkeys, like in Brazil, when there's a clear through line, that is really where he hits that absolute rhythm that he needs for his style to work. So this is a 4, a 5 of love in my heart, as I've said with other things, but a strong 4, and understandable why so many people love this film. And that sets us up as we move out of this section of the wing of King Arthur, and we prepare to jump forward to 1981 next week, and we explore John Boorman's Excalibur here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.